the trick to this drawing is I'm going to be able to draw two fists. I'm going to draw two fists is the secret of this. So what we're going to do is put one fist sort of in kind of, if this is the center, put one fist, and by fist I mean you basically draw like a rectangle that's pinched down at the ends. Okay? That's one fist. Okay, and then you draw the other fist. This is halfway. If you divide the paper into 4 quadrants, maybe put that other fist like right here. So we're taking this and rotating it down. Pinch down here at the ends, right? That's one fist. So that's the fist. And then we'll put the thumb underneath. And the thumb is like it's a Lego block. It's your standard 6-dot Lego block, like that. Okay. We're going to draw the sides of those fists. Okay. Or take this face and draw make it 3-dimensional. Can you do that? By just basically dropping the sides down. You can do the same thing with the Lego thumb too. Alright, so now out of the tops of these rectangles, we're going to shoot 1, 2, 3 lines. 1, 2, 3. Now we're going to put essentially a bowling pin, or you know what, a cone. Let's do a cone. So here's the top part of the cone. Go ahead and draw a circle like that. If you make that a cone or a cylinder, that circle underneath represents the wrist. Okay? So you have the top of the cone and you flare it down like this. Okay? These are it's going to look like that. I like the idea, so he's going to be busting through the ground like this. You guys have all drawn this so far, correct? Okay. I'm just going to keep going, watch. Now we're going to draw the other side of this cone. Okay. The bottom part. I think this is like a cocktail shaker, right? A cocktail shaker looks like this. Or a lava lamp. Alright? At the base of this is the elbow. The elbow is represented by a circle. Okay? Go ahead and draw 2 more lines that go like this, and then have it flare out like kind of like a balloon. I know if this looks kind of crazy, but this is the back side of the tricep. Okay? And we'll add detail there later. Okay? And then on the shoulder joint is going to be a circle like this. From this circular shoulder joint, if this is 12 o'clock, this is 3 o'clock, think about it that way. It's intersecting this at about 11:30, that about the 3 o'clock mark. At about the 9 o'clock mark, go ahead and draw an arc that goes like this. Don't ignore this other thing because I'm going to erase it. Okay? Alright? Got that? And then from maybe the 4 o'clock part of that circle, okay, go ahead and just drop it down about here. And then from this point, go ahead and draw straight across. So this is the shoulder, this is the tricep, there's the elbow, here's the back end of the forearm, there's the forearm. Out of this point right here, that 9 o'clock, go straight up and draw, we're going to draw a circle like that. But you're only see the top part of that circle right here. And right above that arc, the letter D, right? Look at it this way. If I got that egg, the letter D is right there. Then we'll put like a 7, a D7, put another D right down here, then 2 more Ds. Now where you put these Ds, super important. Okay. It's almost like 7 to the D power over here, and then this D is kind of falling off at a different angle. It's not even These are all kind of straight up and down. This one's kind of falling off at a weird angle. So that 7 represents the bottom of the nose, and we're going to tweak it a little bit, but I just want to kind of show you that from these D's, which are his eyes, if you go a little over to the left of that and go straight up and then come back down, right, it should form like a Star Trek symbol. Of course, these shapes are only relevant to this particular sketch at this particular angle. But I'm trying to make you think about the shapes that you're drawing in general. That if I'm drawing a shape that's triangular like that, it's in perspective so that this other one you won't see as much of the face. You see almost the entire face of this triangle here. The face of this is going deep into that page, so that's why you don't see it as much. And then over here, if you think about the middle part of this tricep, cut here, it's like 2 arcs like this. That first arc is his center line of his chest. That other arc is the other end of his pec. So this is one pec here. This nipple would be there roughly. Here's the other one, and his nipple's over there. It's kind of odd, but that's the way it is. All right. The armpit goes in here. You have a rib that goes here, a rib that goes there. You can go ahead and do that swing, so you can see. We don't want to go across his face, so I draw it a little higher. That was a mistake to go across. This is like the bare bones construction line. All right. This is the architecture of the drawing itself. We'll take a flat eraser, or if you're in Photoshop, I want you to lightly erase this. Take an eraser, make it like 20% opaque, and then draw over your line and kind of push it back. Okay? And keep doing it until you don't see much of the drawing at all. But you still see your basics signs. You see your D's, you see your 7, you see your cylinders, you see your balloon triceps, you see your clock face for the shoulder joint, you see your triangular shapes for the sides of his mask. Let's start with the face first, okay? Go to that 7. That's the nose, all right? What we're going to do is sort of blunt the tip of that 7, that corner, right? And then so it's going to look more like a thimble or a cup that's been kind of turned on the side, all right? That line that I drew here represents the underside of his nose, right? This is the shadow of his nose. So if you draw from the tip of this to that eye, or yeah, that part of the D, and from here to that part of the D, that represents the nose. Rather than put a D like that for his eyes, we're gonna make it a little more angular. It's an offset pyramid, right? If this represents the D, pick a point over here. It's gonna be like that. And if you have the D over here, you're going to pick a point over here, and that's going to be the apex of that triangular, right? So then if you have this D shape over here that represents this other eye, pick that point right here and complete that triangular shape. Now remember that other D down here, that's his mouth. You're going to put his teeth on the inside, so basically another part, just kind of draw a parallel track to the, all right, so that top part of the D is his lip, and you can make it a little thicker, and that black line represents his lip. This represents his teeth. We're not going to draw a line like this and break his teeth down because it looks a little crazy seeing each individual tooth, although it doesn't look so bad the way I've just done it, but trust me, it does look odd. But it's good to put those lines down because what you do is they look good on the edges of that D. So go ahead and lightly erase in the center. So those lines look good on the sides, but not so much in the center. And the reason why, is if you were drawing a puck, and let's say you were drawing a puck like this, and to make it look like it's three-dimensional, you might do rendering like this. You're essentially creating a highlight here, a lighter gray value or lighter value, a darker values on the sides. When you do that effectively, you basically make things look three-dimensional. All right? This is what I'm talking about. Okay? So if you think about his teeth being the same way, you see the lines on the sides to create depth, to create those shadows. But by the time we get to the two front teeth, we're going to leave them without lines in between because we want it to look as white as possible. We're essentially creating a cylindrical render scheme on his teeth. And so the teeth that are closest to us, furthest away from the back of his throat, are the whitest. And so we're not going to add the lines in between the teeth. But the teeth that are on the side, they're going back towards the back of his throat. We're going to put the lines. In fact, the lines between the teeth are going to get thicker and thicker. You'll see that in my illustrations of the Joker or whatever. Is that the gaps between the teeth will get, I'll do deeper and wider blacks because it basically pushes the sides of the mouth backwards into space. I'm basically doing what I just showed you. I'm creating a three-dimensional sort of shape just through the line work I'm creating between his teeth. Now, the bottom of that D, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to draw his lower teeth, but we're just going to show the teeth are underneath that gum line, so you only see the very tips kind of pop out. And again, we'll just draw the edges, draw a couple lines, little dits on the sides, like we would here, to create three-dimensionality in this row of teeth. Now, the same slight angle that you have to the bottom of that D, you want to apply to this. That's the bottom of his cowl. Have it come straight down. And you can sort of see how if you draw through this arm, you can see how his chin is there, right? Maybe I should have you draw work in progress. Okay. Now what I do with my Wolverine cowl is I cut it in on the side, and same with the Batman. So I go to that corner, and I cut it in, and this is the Ben Affleck Batman, right? The Christian Bale costume goes like this, and that's Batman, of course. So go out here, cut in a little bit, come down, and then you got to do the other side. And because it's foreshortened, the cut is it's not as deep. Okay. Now we want to establish the lower lip on this. So this bottom part of the D, go ahead and like just a little bit below, put a line like that. That represents the shadow of the lower lip, and that represent the chin is right underneath there. Okay. See where this eye and this eye, like I said, where the tears are. Imagine like a tear kind of jumping through space. Right? This is the way to think of create two arcs. The lower arc actually, that's the bridge of the nose. That's this line here. I would take a Sharpie and draw it, but then it would look really bad for me for the rest of the day. Okay? And the reason why that line is really good is now I can take out of that line, I can go ahead and throw like a couple lines coming out of it, going up. Think of like 3 claws. 1, 2, 3. Those represent furrowed brow lines, and that makes him look like he's intense. See how this turns, and you approximate this sort of bulbous kind of ball shape for the chin, right? And that's important because it gives us this chin line over here. Now let's go back to this corner cowl line here. That arc, continue going, and then have it veer a little sharp back. That's where the ear is going to be. It's going to basically sit above that line on the side. And this is important because from that bottom part of the ear, if you come down and basically form like a J, that creates the rest of that chin. And then from the bottom part of here, if you go straight up to the other part of his mask. Or you can do that kind of mask. Depends on what kind of mask you like. Okay, so to do it once more, this is what you should have had. So you go from here and you scoop in and come up to that corner point, and then you kind of flare out and you end up at the bottom of that ear. The shoulder will cover the chin. I'm just drawing through so you understand. Then from over here, above that eye, you go scoop to that corner point and then come straight down. And because that ear is behind the rest of this, you can't really see it. So you just kind of close it out right there, roughly. And then that comes down and forms the other edge of that cowl. From the top part of this eye, his eyebrow would be here and here. Okay? And that's important. Okay. So from the top part of that eyebrow, that's where that skull is going to come. And that, because it's an upshot, you're not going to see a lot of that forehead. So just create that moon, and it has to go kind of back here. It looks kind of weird, but I think if you erase the lines after you put that line down, it looks correct. Okay, I'm going to say that where this is and this is, I want it to, it should be roughly parallel to that. So I think I've got this way too high. That looks better. The bottom part of the eyes, bottom part of that shadow of the nose, corner of the mouths, all that, they all run in parallel. And that gives us evidence that the face, the skull, is in perspective properly. Here are the nuances I'm going to introduce. From the bottom part of this thimble, midpoint right here to midpoint here, and then from that midpoint, which is in between the two nostrils, you drop that down. So this shadow, there's a triangular shadow that goes underneath there. The underside of this lip, broaden that, make it wider. Go ahead and shade this in. I hope you guys are still all working in pencil. We're going to go to ink in a bit. Okay. Put a line right here on the side that represents, this is the upper lip, this represents this part of the mouth. Because the light source is generally in front of us, if you just do a little bit of scritchy rendering right there, it makes it look like makes it look a little more three-dimensional. Now, let's go back to that circle that we had here that represents the shoulder joint, okay? Draw the top part of it. That's his shoulder. Okay, now we can erase everything that the shoulder represents. And if you draw this line here from that point, that 9 o'clock point down here, that's his backside. When you get to about here where it meets his jawline, you could draw a line and basically go from here down to here. That's a costume line. Because this round thing represents his shadow, the bottom, this part here, see how I instantly kind of create a little volume on there? I can render out of here. And all I've done is basically taken a circular element and done this. It's like the moon, right? It's the moon with a core shadow like that. And all I've done is just cut a section off, and that represents the top part of it, of his shoulder. There'd be more of that moon here, except this tricep that I drew, which is represented by two sort of canoes, sits on the underside of that moon, right? They're attached to the bottom of that sphere, and so they have their own kind of shadows that run underneath. All right, so we're looking up at two canoes in the water, and they have core shadows at the bottom. All right, now out of here is a bit of the bicep. I'm going to put the elbow over here. It's like a little bar of soap. It also has a shadow. The underside of that forearm, let's just go ahead and finish that forearm. Draw the line, the cross line. let's just go ahead and shadow this in. I want to kind of show you when I start putting the shadows in for real what I'm building off of. If we draw the face of this fist and we break it into four, that would be 4 fingers and a thumb. If you just go ahead and just draw in the sides as indicated in black, okay, you can see that. And then let's go ahead and do one claw and to get a little wider at the tips. You have this connector, okay, shadow the underside of that. This is a back muscle, and again, just trust me that if you divide it in half as if it were like a gem, that bottom part of the gem would be black like that, right? But because it's curved, the shadow actually kind of goes like that. Just like the moon, right? If it's a cube, it's half. If it's a sphere, the shadow kind of bends with the line. We had the center line, which represented the line between his pecs. The underside of his pec to the nipple is going to be over here actually. It's like the nipple is like a tent pole and it holds water, the water representing the top part of this. The underside, it's going to be wider over here and narrower over here, and so that's going to be filled in with shadow as well. You can just make it very simple and just, if you just make sort of C shapes like this, I mean this is, I've run out of room, but if you make C shapes and then another C that cuts in here, it's almost like butt cleavage, I don't know. Look, this is, yeah, it's like the bottom side of a drawing, but then that represents, this represents a rib, this represents the muscle that goes into the rib, and out of that, where they meet, just create another arc like that, fill that in, and that gets offset. Now from this middle pec line over here, see where that nipple is here? It's going to be in perspective, so that distance to this distance, so right about here. So we'll go from the neckline down to what that nipple is, come down a little bit. That represents the bottom side of the pec. So from there to there, and then from here to here, and then just fill it in with black. And then from the bottom part of here, we're just going to arc it out. And you have that line that represents this line, okay? Now he's looking a little flat, I think. I want to round him out, put some more meat on that side of his body. So basically, you go up here, and you can just basically, you could keep going, and you can start seeing how if you add too much, it doesn't look right. But by adding just another layer, and then adding that shadow, this represents a muscle, and this represents the muscle behind it. We'll take a slightly thicker pencil, and we're going to look at all this that's there. And as you can see, I've kind of shadowed each element, but it doesn't really work that way. But I want you to know that you should be aware of all the lumps. So it's like if you were to take a thin, very fine, a very, very thin membrane, kind of wrap it around this entire arm, where would the shadows go? And they would follow like these shapes underneath without being a slave to them, meaning the transition from here to here, this valley would be, there'd be another shadow that would basically connect these up, right? And so you connect these canoe shadows to this elbow shadow. You take this elbow shadow and you connect it up to this shadow here. This arm, this fist will cast, if the light source is here or here, it's going to cast a shadow on the forearm itself. This finger is going to cast a shadow across that thumb if you want it. So there are all these things you can do. And this bicep here will have a bit of a shadow on the side. So you can go all the way to black on all the way here if you wanted to. So you don't have to worry about all that. But at least the line, these shapes here, will be born of something. They will be built on this knowledge that there's this three-dimensional shape that's underneath the structure, and that you're not just putting a random line down, that you know exactly where that line goes because in your mind you have a three-dimensional canoe at the bottom of this shoulder. Okay? And then when you get really nuanced, you realize that this shoulder is not just a circular globe, that it's actually a little flat up here, comes in, and so that changes the shadow, that there's actually three pieces to the shoulder muscle, and so one of the pieces here, so you can draw another little bit of a shadow here. So these are kind of like, you know, if this is 101, anatomy 101, and this is this represents maybe anatomy a 200 level class or a 300 level class, right? And you start realizing that nothing really is symmetrical, that it actually flares up even more so at the corner. Right? And then even this forearm, it actually goes in and then raises up. Right? That there are nuances to every single line. Alright, so now I'm going to go ahead and start inking this. Now, this is where I can add some nuance. Like, so if we go to the eye of Wolverine's eye, rather than doing a straight triangle, I'm going to start with that triangle like we talked about when we did this early on. Okay? But I'm going to curve that top part just a slight bit. I'm going to curve that side a little bit. And what I just did there is I just took, hold on, I have to show this properly. I took these triangular elements, and it's a very, very subtle thing, but I just curved it. I curved that line. Okay? An arc like that, and I curve this. It's a very subtle thing, but now I've taken an eye that is, now there's nothing wrong with that eye. You can do that eye for Batman or Wolverine. I mean, it's very much like Batman the animated series, and Frank Miller will go ahead and do Batman with an eye that is just boom, he does it. For me personally, I put a little bit of an arc into it. I feel like that gives me a little more, it's more realism, less graphical. So I will add arcs to all three. So at the end of the day, it looks triangular and graphical, but there's a very slight nuanced sort of curvature to it. Now let's go back to that bridge that we created. That if you think about it like eyeglasses, I mean, if you had eyeglasses here, right, the bridge between the two eyeglasses go like that. And that's a useful line on a character like Batman or Wolverine, because out of that you can draw these sort of triangular, or these three claw-like lines that basically bifurcate, and those represent the burr of Frau. It gives the intensity, it gives it creates emotion in the figure, and you need to know where that line is. And if you think about sort of the rim line between two, so the joint that connects two pieces of eyeglasses together, it kind of helps give you a starting point to run those lines out of. Okay, and then out of those two, again, rather than drawing a nose that goes straight down like this, okay, if this what represents Wolverine nose, I'm going to take that point, this point over here, okay, and curve it ever so slightly. And I'm telling you, I don't know if you can tell the difference from that side of the camera, but when I draw that line, I'm not drawing it straight. I'm putting a slight curve to it. It's very slight. And all these slight curvatures throughout the entire drawing will add up to something that feels a little rounder. So there are people that draw in straight lines and it's very graphical, guys like Brian Stelfreeze, and then there are people that draw everything in curves and round shapes. And it's really kind of where the two meet that you start seeing all these different styles kind of emerge, right? And then even at the end of that nose, rather than drawing a straight line like that, it's a slight curve, because what it is It's this. This is what I'm drawing. Right? And so his nose is a little hooked, and so I want those lines to represent that, and then the nostrils flare out in a softer, kind of more organic way. And so the cowl is going to run along those edges and be defined by the shapes that it covers. And then we just go ahead and so you can see how it looks like when you fill it in. There's the shadow of the nose. The upper lip, I added a little nuance to that D shape. What I basically did, instead of taking that D like this, is I broke it in half, because that's where the frenulum or whatever that is, the little scoop here. You basically have, I don't know what I would call it, like wings, I guess, right? If you were drawing a bird, a goose, right? So the upper lip it's actually kind of these two wings. And then I filled it in with black. The teeth go underneath, as we discussed before, and then the lines are on the sides, separating the teeth. Bottom teeth pop out of here. Shadow that lower lip there. And then I'm just going to ink that side of the upper lip as indicated before. And that looks weird because it looks like a black splotch on the guy's face, but when we go ahead and add a little more shadow on the side over here, on that side of that lip, and once we fill in all this, you'll see that putting that in makes it look like there's a light source that's kind of hitting that face. Thank you very much, guys. All right, so let's keep moving, rolling along with this. And I'm filling in the blacks. I would normally use a brush for this, but I'm just using the marker. I don't know why I'm doing it with the marker. All right, now I'm going to draw just ink that top line there. And when I kind of walked you through it, I did it as a sphere, but it's actually more nuanced than that. It leans in and then it flattens out the top because it's an upshot, and then it kind of comes back down. So now let's ink the shoulder. It starts with where the shoulder meets the back. See how I've taken that ball joint and added really subtle turns to it. So there's a straight part here, slight curve, flatness, and then back down. So I'm changing I'm trying to round out this torso a bit, so I'm going to start introducing lines that kind of that create these kind of shapes. And so some rendering lines, you can do it this way, or you could do it this way. But you can see how the angle of the lines I'm choosing help create and define the forms that we're trying to suggest. If the lines are like this, right, and it basically rolls over to the top, the light will kind of hit it at that point of that muscle. Right, it'll be the bottom sides of these sort of circular shapes. The light source is over here. What's going to happen is this pec muscle is going to be, you can put that in shadow or render it over here. And so, and especially since the middle of this costume is dark, right? From that shoulder down, it runs like that. So you're going to put that line, right? Here's the belt. And here's the other shoulder line. Here's the other costume line that goes like that. His elbow pops right here. There's the forearm line. What we're going to do with the fist is we have the basic structure, but basically you put like a little pyramid on top of each one. All right, the biggest one's right here. Draw the fingers out. It pinches a little at the top. And because it pinches on both sides here and here, here and here, here and here, it almost creates little diamond shapes inside. So you fill those in, that represents that, and then you draw a straight line out of that. Of course, it only pinches in over here. Okay. Just the same way on that nose, we kind of curve that line. We're going to curve the bottom of these fingers here. This finger basically, because we see a bit of the side, you're going to see a bit of the flesh kind of pop off to the side. You can just represent it as a triangle shape, or you can draw an X. Draw an X on the side. All right. That's just probably, and then out of that X, draw the palm. The round palm, one here. But you could do the same thing here. There's one, there's two, right? There's one, there's two, and I could probably do it all over the human form. It's this kind of curved Y shape. And as I'm drawing this, I'm trying to break it down to the most simplest shape, so you'll find that this looks a little stilted and it doesn't look quite as nuanced or as organic as it should. And that's because when you draw, you start with these basic shapes in your mind, but as you render and you ink, or as you finalize your pencils, you start thinking about things that are lined up, things that have arcs and shapes to them, right? So that top part of the thumb is rounder. It's narrower to the bottom. Right, like that. There's wrinkles here in the costume line. Okay. There's one of those kind of Y shapes right there. There's a Y shape right there. Y shape there. Actually, I screwed that one. I should go like that. Sorry, not like that. Okay. And then even that forearm up here, just you can kind of see what happens if you just drop in these kind of weird Y things. And yeah, maybe just do it and see what happens. But they do. I like that shape because it speaks to how these muscles all kind of overlap one another and intertwine and induct into each other. But it creates a little more three-dimensionality because it layers it. And also, I don't really make myself a slave to the musculature. I don't really worry too much about the names of each one and where they go. It's really about whether it looks right or not, whether you have some dynamic flow there or not. And so now I want to get to the claws. I'm going to go ahead and curve. I'm going to add curvature to that all the way around. And let's see what happens. It's nice kind of using a brush because you can just kind of fill it in quickly, but you can also slab in these black shapes, and sometimes just if you want to have some fun, get some paper and take a brush and just kind of practice drawing with the brush and then dropping in your shadows very quickly and forcefully, boldly. Actually, boldly is the word I'm looking for, not forcefully. Boldly with a brush, and you might be happy with some of the results you may see. And I'm going to give you an example of that. Put blobs in here for the fingers underneath here. What I love about actually inking with a brush is if you go a little sloppy with it, you get like happy accidents, things that maybe aren't anatomically completely structurally sound, but they look good. So stuff like that edge there, I don't know really what that represents, but I like kind of that graphical look I got. If you like Frank Miller's work or Klaus Janson, there's a lot of that where it's a happy accident born of knowledge and understanding of the structures underneath. But if you go in and do this enough, you get something that again has some structure, underlying knowledge, but is also very kind of shall I say artsy, maybe a little expressionistic. All right. Core shadow, that arm, ribs, rib. Underside of the rib cage. So you can see how this looks very kind of staid and straightforward, but I inked this very quickly and I was just kind of punching those shadows in and seeing what kind of happened. And I personally like this effect more than just sort of trapping shadows and filling in. But a lot of digital to me is, okay, I've got this shape, I'm going to drop in, I'm going to fill it in completely with black, and then move on from there. And everything has a very polished and smooth look to it. I mean, don't get me wrong, but there's, it's not, it just doesn't quite have kind of the hairiness, I guess. I don't know how to really describe it. Of something that you get through these sort of analog mistakes. And look, everything that's done analog can be created visually, digitally. I realize that, yes. So a dry brush, if you guys have a dry brush at this point, it's nice because you can go over here and add some gray values. And all you do is just kind of just finally go over it and over it and over and over it. And even if you can't see it, subtly adding a gray tone to it and just keep going. I'm just connecting. I'm just moving the light source a little bit more over, so everything's going to be a little more shadowed than what I had to start. hopefully you guys. It's a complicated angle. I keep choosing up shots. I felt like we had the most success when we did just like a headshot. But man, if you don't push yourself and do up shots, you're not going to learn how to do them. And you have to realize really the only way to kind of figure it out is to break down the anatomy of it, the shapes that basically underline the structures. And the more and more you do it, the better you get at it. I'm going to put ink on the tip of this card here. Hopefully this will work, guys. And then I'm just going to flick it across, and hopefully I'm not going to get it. Oh! The way you do it, you should splatter like that. And I'm just basically going to put some ink here. The trick to drawing blood very quickly, you draw a blob, a circular blob, draw sort of like a tail to it, and maybe a blob at the other end. I wouldn't do that every single time, but if you just do that a couple times, it gets pretty close. And then like maybe it's like thinking, like that blob of blood is thinking, and so or it's worried, it's got spidey sense. So it's got like some friends. Or you draw like the Y, a V, a Y, an A, a Z. Secret code to someone in chat. Okay. I hope this made sense to you guys. I had a lot of fun myself, but it just goes to show as I do some of these more difficult angles or bits of information, how really complicated it can be. But a lot of it, I think, is because you start with the simple. And you just practice and do it over and over and over and over and over again. And every time you do it, you add maybe a little more nuance or a little more understanding, and it starts evolving. It starts evolving from a very simple shot of something that is spheres and circles, and it becomes something that has a little more personality to it, a little more understanding of the human form underneath. So I'm going to erase some of this stuff that I had here because it makes no sense that there'd be like these lemon wedges and circles and stuff like that over here. Because this is a drawing I'm going to give away to someone that could put it maybe on their wall and go, he's got hair, and so we're going to do that. And hair, you're basically coming down, hitting the line, pulling it back up all at the same time. Meaning I'm not doing a flat line like that because that will look like a flat line. I'm coming down, hitting the paper, and pulling it up. It's a U shape. Boom, 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 boom. Right? Boom, 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 boom. All right. And I'm going in circles, rotating it around the form. I want to see the people that threw ink on their pages and see where it landed. So much fun. Let me so the inside of the mouth, you're going to basically, you can go all black with it, but it'll look flat. Draw an angle like this, like an L or a 7, I guess a 7, and just color the top parts in. So leave like that little corner open. And that represents light going through the opening of the mouth and hitting the backside. And it just makes it look a little more 3D. Okay? You've got stubble, so go ahead and hit some stubble there. And again, very light hits, like they're dits on the page. And all the dits are going towards the center here. Going towards that mouth. And if you just hit the globs of blood that you had, basically taking it, putting some here on this corner, and now I'm going to hit it. Okay. How do you show these to me? All right. So we have a Discord channel that is connected to this Twitch channel. There are two places. If you are a sub, there's a actual channel called Draw Along posted in there. Just one drawing per person, just from me, like the final thing.